end of our last session, I mentioned that some people come into marriage already wounded. And some find healing in marriage, but tragically, many people find additional wounding in marriage. Now, some people try to run their homes with the same efficiency that they run their offices. Now, there's nothing wrong with efficiency, but life in the home is not always about efficiency. Efficiency does have its place, but when God created man and asked him to fill the earth and to subdue it, God did not choose the most efficient way to do it, but he chose the most effective way to do it. You see, if efficiency was the idea, he could have made Adam with very many Eves, or many Adams and many Eves, or given Eve the ability to give birth to many babies several times a year, like rabbits do. The idea was not efficiency. The idea was effectiveness. And most people enter the world one at a time. There are few families with twins, fewer with triplets, and the more babies you expect in one birth, the fewer you find in a particular family. And yet, the earth has more than 7 billion people alive today. So God is choosing an effective way, a way that he knows will work. He wants the relational way. Efficiency can be very insensitive to relationships. Mediocrity, of course, is not an option. In the home, relationships come before efficiency. He who is bankrupt in relationships is bankrupt indeed. Though his bank account may have money and he may have property, if you do not have functional relationships, you are bankrupt. Life is about relationships, and everything else is just details. So when you create a safe environment, relationships begin to thrive and begin to flourish. So the big question is this: how do we create safe environments in our relationships? Some of the content I'm going to share has been excerpted from Dr. Gary Smalley's DNA of Relationships. I found it extremely useful, and I've used it in building up the families that we interact with in our seminars. Dr. Smalley gives 5 points in how to build relationships and create safe environments. Number 1 is respect the wall. Number 2, honor one another. Number 3, suspend judgment. Number 4, value your differences. And number 5, be trustworthy. Let's examine them one by one and see how we progress on this whole journey of creating safe environments within the home and the work environment. Number 1, respect the wall. When people are threatened in a relationship, they build a wall. Our natural response is to knock down the wall. Well, the outcome of this is fear. When you try to break the wall, we are perceived as being dangerous. Ecclesiastes 10 and verse 8 has a hilarious verse there. It says, "Whoever digs a pit may fall into it. Whoever breaks through a wall may be bitten by a snake." When you break the invisible wall between you and the person who has built it, you just mess up those relationships. So we need to be careful. Instead of trying to knock down the wall, we must respect it and create a safe environment on our side of the wall, so that the person who built that wall will gradually feel safe, bring the wall down, and come back and begin to enjoy our relationship. You see, whoever builds a wall is building it because they don't feel safe. Now, many marriages, as we said, start off with wounded people. Both husbands and wives are wounded. Now, if your spouse is wounded, he or she will be hiding behind a wall. So when you keep on pressing their fear buttons, the walls come up, and the communication in that home can be a terrible mess. Men and women are both wounded by their growing up years. Here's a question for you. Are you always hiding behind a wall? Or are you the kind of man who wounds others and makes them build up a wall against you. When we create a safe environment, we allow our children, our colleagues, and our spouses to come out from behind the wall. Here are some pointers in how to bring down this wall. Number one, let the person who is hiding know that you are aware and you understand why the wall was created. The wall is created primarily for the person hiding to feel safe. Let the person know that you are aware that the wall will only come down when that person feels safe. So instead of trying to knock it down, speak from across the wall and speak gently. Let the person realize that you are no longer a danger to them. Your job is to keep on making that person feel safe. As the man of the house, tell the person that you will protect them from others that make them feel unsafe. Very often, people build the wall against the man, children against their father, wives against their husband, and so by telling them that you're going to protect them, you are in fact saying you'll protect them from yourself harming them. So walls are usually for self-protection, to ward off the person perceived to be an enemy. So when the walls are coming up and you are unable to communicate with the person behind that wall, watch out. You may be the enemy they are running away from. When the offended person feels safe, the wall will come down. So what do walls look like in reality? Your son comes home and asks him, Jimmy, how are you? Fine. But you can see from the countenance of his face that he's not fine. The words do not match the countenance. The person is irritable. The person is impatient. A person is quarrelsome. A person is defensive. A person is accusing the other. In bed, spouses turn their backs to one another and don't talk to one another. At the dining room table, they speak to each other through their children. Does this sound like your house? Walls have been built, and your job as a man of that house is to create a safe environment by respecting that wall and making sure the people who created it feel safe, and they will bring it down. The second point in creating safe environments is to honor one another. In 1 Peter chapter 3 and verse 7, God is speaking specifically to husbands. And he says, you husbands, in the same way, live with your wives in an understanding way, as with someone weaker, since she is a woman, and show her honor as a fellow heir of the grace of life, so that your prayers may not be hindered. I've not heard many people preach on this verse. The husband is being asked to live with his wife in an understanding manner. In other words, listen to her and understand her and live with her in a way of understanding. A woman is created very differently from a man. And if you want to reason with a woman, don't always use logic. They do reason with logic, they do understand logic, but they have other senses they go by in their reasoning that men are completely oblivious of. A woman will be uncomfortable about a situation, but may not be able to tell you why they're uncomfortable. And very often, what we often call the sixth sense is right. And so husbands are being asked to live with their wives in a way of understanding. As with a weaker vessel, the word weaker here is not a weakness of strength necessarily. It's a weakness. Think about it this way. If you compare a wine glass with a water glass, the wine glass is weaker. The wine glass is more fragile, but the wine glass is also more valuable. And so the weakness does not mean that he is not valuable. As a matter of fact, that scripture says he is a fellow heir of the grace of life. So you're treating her as a weaker vessel, but as a valuable vessel, and you're working with her in an understanding manner. And God is asking the husband to do that so that his prayers will not be hindered.